For the first time ever, I'm in front of the camera, which I'm not into that really. But anyway, the reason I am is I got into a discussion the other day about the old bug. Somebody was asking me about fuel smell and how they had a car just like it, and it always reeked of fuel. And I had a discussion with them that no, this does not smell. And if your bug reeks of fuel when you turn the corner, that is not normal. A slight smell from these Beetles in a garage in the summertime, maybe, but that is simply because the front fuel tank is vented to the atmosphere. Not to mention, we also have a carburetor in the back. It's got a bit of fuel in it. Maybe some of the fuel leaks out of there. The bug should not smell of fuel while you walk by it. That is bullshit. So I'll go through a couple of things that I did in the front of this, because when I got it, it smelled of fuel. Simple fixes. It's wintertime here. I live in Canada. It's pretty cold. I'm gonna swing that garage door open so I can get some better lighting. And as I said in previous videos of this car, it's not a show car, so I haven't tackled the trunk yet. I did do the vent lines and all that sort of stuff. Minor things in the front trunk, but it's ugly under there, just like a lot of our bugs are. But anyways, I'll get in there and show you how these tanks are vented properly, and hopefully help you, some of you folks out there with smelly Beetles. Anyway, again, they do not smell. Okay, when I started doing this job here of fuel smell, I did it through the process of elimination. I didn't want to go and spend money on absolutely everything, but in the end I ended up replacing pretty much everything except for two things, but I'll go over that. So the first thing I did was replace the filler cap. I don't need to say much about this. Obviously you want your gasket to not have any cracks in it. It's got to be in good shape. Bought this cap, I don't even remember where. Ordered it from somebody with a bunch of other stuff. I ordered most of my lines and hoses from Wolfsburg West. I honestly can't remember if this cap came from them too, but pretty simple. Number one, cap. Check your cap, replace it. This gasket's all messed up. So here's your filler neck. I have all these new, but I did not install them because I got rid of my smell before I did it. I do have them in boxes right now. If you buy these, again, I bought everything I needed from Wolfsburg West. If you buy these, there's also sort of a rubber gasket underneath here. Make sure you get that along with these hoses for the filler neck. So this part here for the overflow is where my smell was coming from. So this is a new hose from Wolfsburg. There's a T-piece here, and this is the vent. So the biggest thing with the vent, it's actually supposed to come in as a loop all the way down here, but whatever, I just want straight up. So what you want to make sure is that your vent line is higher than where the fuel comes in. Simple reason for that is if you do get splash over, if you have this looped underneath, the fuel will go into the vent line, find the low spot, and basically plug off your vent. So you want it to come up so that if fuel splashes, it'll just drain back down into here. So I'm not going to take the cover off, but again, you want that vent line. This camera is a piece of crap. You want this vent line to go over the top, around, behind there. Here it is popping back out right here. And there's another T. Again, this is for 69, so 70 I think they have a carbon canister mounted here they have to vent through. But in this case, these are still vented to atmosphere directly. So this is a vent which goes all the way to this port here on the fuel tank.
So I can only assume that there's a baffle in here to prevent lots of sloshing. But again, if the fuel it comes up here, splashes up in the line, you want it to drain back down into the tank. So the T-piece needs to be very high, because this line here, the third one, is the one that literally goes to atmosphere. So if you follow that down, hopefully we can see it, it's in the dark spot. It goes down here, and if you look down there, hopefully I can get this. Hard to focus, but that goes literally through a hole in the front end of the car. It is vented directly to atmosphere. So one other thing to look at, under the sending unit on the fuel tank on the top, there's also a gasket there. Mine was still holding. I popped those screws off, even though it doesn't look like it. I put a new gasket in anyway, but I really don't think I had to do it. I also have another spare in case I messed it up. But anyway, so right now, this car, vented the way it is to atmosphere, does not smell. I can hammer this thing around corners all over the place. My cab does not smell of fuel. Even in the 60s, Volkswagen engineers would have never let that go. No one would want to drive a car that reeked of fuel like that. So if anybody tells you fuel smells normal, hard no. So again, this is for the, I guess it would be late 68 to early 1970. Volkswagen, of course, I think the engineers knew there'd be enthusiasts out there and they wanted to confuse us. So it's a transition year. They're not all exactly the same, but if your tank looks like mine and doesn't have that balanced steel balance line going across, if it has the two or the other port on the driver's side, passenger side if you're in the UK, yeah, you need to tie back into that with the extra T and vent to atmosphere. Anyway, other places where you might get a fuel smell, obviously the line on the bottom of the tank, I didn't talk about that. Check that over, lines at the rear going to the engine, and of course if you have a carb leak, anything like that. But I just wanted to cover the filler neck and the fuel, the proper way to vent it. God, it's cold today. Anyways, after looking that over, I started thinking to myself, maybe somebody doesn't really understand why these tanks need to be vented. The cap is not a, I don't know the proper term for it, but it doesn't have a spring on it to allow for vacuum relief or pressure relief. So as you get temperature fluctuations, the vapor pressure in the tank will either go high if it's hot, low if it's cold, or even as you drain the tank driving along, you're going to pull somewhat of a vacuum. So those newer caps have like a vacuum breaker on them. This system is not designed for that, in this year anyway, so they vented in those days to atmosphere to compensate for that. I've heard some people have looped the vent line around and not to atmosphere. Going from here all the way around, straight back down to this point here, if it'll focus there, without this guy going to atmosphere. Don't do that. Essentially, the tank is not vented whatsoever. So when they pull the cap off to fill on a hot day, the cap will literally blow off in their hand. Not like violently, but it'll pop off. And I've heard in the opposite direction where they're pulling somewhat of a vacuum and the fuel pump has a hard time getting fuel to the carburetor. So it is important to vent those, and again, hopefully this helps you out. And I promise I'll never show my face on YouTube again if it's that bad.